Now up to Yud Chet Amud Bet at the end, just starting Yud Tet, just 18b at the very end of the page, up to we're going to be doing Yud Tet 19 today. We're doing mostly from the Koren Talmud Bavli of R. Steinsaltz and my own humble additions, and also we're going to try to learn the R.Akiva Eiger on the daf. Tanu Rabbanan Beit Shammai Omrim Lo Yimkor Adam Chametzo L'Goy Ela Imken Yodea Bo Sheyichle Kodem HaPesach Divrei Beit Shammai Beit Hillel Omrim Kol Zman Shemutar L'Ochlo Mutar L'Mochro. So the sages taught that a similar dispute that was said just before. Beit Shammai says a person may not sell his leaven to a Gentile on Passover Eve, day before Seder night, unless he knows that the leaven will be finished before the Passover, I mean midday on the day before Seder night, unless he knows that the leaven will be finished before the Passover, right? And Beit Hillel says we're a little stricter about that. We burn it even before midday. See Hilchos Pesach. So that's Beit Shammai. He knows the chametz is going to be finished before Passover. He does not specify times. And Beit Hillel says, as long as it is permitted for the Jew to eat leaven, it is also permitted for him to sell it to a Gentile. So what is it? The first third of the day, after 6 hours, it's forbidden. Forbidden to benefit from, forbidden to own, totally forbidden. So after midday, it's right out. So Beit Hillel says, yeah, what you just said. So as long as a Jew can eat it, according to law, you can also sell it to a non-Jew. And the moment a Jew sells his chametz to not a Jew, is that correct English? Oh, a Jew sells to not a Jew, okay? At that moment, the Jew ceased to be responsible for the leaven at the moment it's sold. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Kutach Bavli v'kol minei kutach asor limkor 30 yom kodem HaPesach. So, Rabbi Yehuda, he is a more strict law. He says kutach bavli, Babylonian kutach, spice containing leavened bread and crumbs, some sort of a leavened foodstuff made with. They used to make it with a little moldy bread. It was absolutely delish, according to all the sources. Anyhow, I mean, not everybody likes kutach, but it was a very popular food back then. Let me tell you. Nowadays, you don't see it around so much. So anyhow. So this kutach, Babylonian kutach, not other kinds of kutach, prohibited to sell to a Gentile 30 days before Passover. Because kutach is used exclusively as a spice, it lasts longer than other foods. So, in other words, so according to Rabbi Yehuda, even if you sell it to a Gentile, it's still chametz going into Passover, which is unusual because, as far as we know today, if you sell your leaven, then it's no longer yours and there's no violation. Anybody want a cooking class here? Okay, here we go. Kutach was made from milk, water, salt, and breadcrumbs. It was very sour. Because of its sharp taste, spicy Middle Eastern food. Kutach was used mainly as a condiment. As a result, it kept for a long time. Kutach was a typical Babylonian food, and so forth. But the Jews in Eretz Yisrael, they didn't like kutach so much. Rabbi Yehuda was in Eretz Yisrael, so he wasn't a fan of kutach. I don't know if that affected his halachic decision, but this is just a cultural aside. So even those, but the minority of Jews in the land of Israel at that time who actually liked kutach. They kept calling it Babylonian kutach. So Tanu Rabbanan notnin mezonot lifnei hakelev v'chatzer natlo v'yatza ein nizkakin lo. Sages taught in a different brayta. One may ab initio put food before the dog in the courtyard on Shabbat, as we are not concerned that a dog might lift it and carry it out into the public domain. Now we're talking about the laws of transferring from one private to public domain on Shabbos. Anybody who wants to see R.Akiva, this is R.Akiva. A low budget film here, okay? Low budget. And we're back. So, a dog. Put the food in the courtyard on Shabbos. There might be a problem with your dog. You have a dog. You have a dog. It's your dog. So we're not responsible just for our own person. We're also responsible for our possessions. Our not possessions, our family members, which are not possessions. And our dog is like half possession, half family member kind of thing. But it's our responsibility. So so if the dog breaks Shabbos, Gewalt. So if the dog lifted and exited the courtyard, you don't have to worry about it, he's saying. You know, you might think that, even my dog can't break Shabbos. No, the Talmud makes everything perfectly clear. No, your dog is not required to keep the laws of Shabbos. Your dog is required to keep the laws of Nizikin, damages. If the dog does damage, that's your bill. It's on your bill, it's on your account. But the laws of Shabbos, it's hard to break Shabbos with a dog. Carrying on a leash, we'll discuss it another time. If there's an Erev, it's not such a problem. That's another halachic discussion. So don't worry about the dog transferring, basically. That's kayotze bo notnim mazonot lifnei hagoy v'chatzer v'natlo v'yatza ein nizkakin lo hatu lamali en hach ma'od tema hai rami alea v'hai lo rami alea kamash malan. So the Brayta continued in a somewhat similar note. So it's talking about somebody that's not you or not a Jew, and something that's yours, your possession, your food, let's say, and it's in a private domain, and you or a Jew is not transferring it, but something that is not a Jew, such as not a Jew or an animal. What else could there be? Your rock. No, I don't think so. Anyhow, so there's So you have Gentile neighbors. We're good neighbors, right? You leave your food in the courtyard on Shabbos. The Gentile neighbor, Kozowski, comes along. Kozowski says he lifts it up and he goes out. Don't worry about it. It's not you're not transferring. He's transferring. So the Gemara asks, why do I need this as well? Hatu lamali. What do I need all this for? This case is the same as that case. In the terms of the intellectual structure, it's the same. We don't worry about an animal. We have animals, plants, vegetables, and minerals. So anything that is an animal that has some sort of independent choice on its low level can take. It's his problem. It's not your problem. With the laws of Shabbos, but about a human being, okay, it's a neighbor, Kowalski. So Kowalski comes. So basically, you'd say it's the same law. Not that we compare humans to animals. Any human being, Jew or not a Jew, could act like an animal. God forbid. A person has to certain amount of everybody has a nefesh behemi, but that's another discussion. So, but in terms of this sugya and the intellectual construct, this is the same thing. So the halachot regarding the dog and the halachot regarding to the not a Jew are identical, as Shabbat prohibitions do not apply to either of them. The Gemara answers, this is a distinction. Lest you say in this case, in the case of the dog, responsibility for food is incumbent upon the owner of the courtyard who owns the dog. And in this case, in the case of the Gentile, Gentile, or not so Gentile, doesn't matter in terms of we're just talking about law here. The responsibility for his food is not incumbent upon the owner of the courtyard. Therefore, in a situation where there is concern that Shabbat will be desecrated, there's room to say that one may not give food to a Gentile. Therefore, the Braita teaches us, no, you don't have to worry. Don't be a super Fermi crazy making up churmas that don't exist. Have your food in the courtyard. Kowalski, either your friend Kowalski or your neighbor Kowalski, or just some dude comes in and takes your food from private domain to public domain. It's your food, but he's a separate human being. Okay? So it comes to teach us that that's not your problem. Doesn't violate Shabbos. So I said R.Akiva Eiger. This is similar. If we go back to the beginning of the tractate of the Sabbath, first Mishnah, it says there's a first part and a second part. In the first part, the guy in the house standing inside of the house, and the poor guy or somebody is standing outside of the house. The poor guy reaches his hand inside, and he puts something into the hand of the guy in the house. Then the guy in the house is exempt, and the guy outside who put it in to transfer from outside to inside is culpable on transfer. And there's all these different possibilities, right? So there's a culpability either for putting in the hand, putting your hands outside into a different outside domain, or being on the outside and putting your hands into a domain, and either taking or putting down. So we have 4 basic cases. What does it say? There's 2 that are for inside and 2 that are for outside. I'm not going to go through all the possibilities now, but basically the culpability is if you do the whole action, whoever you are on the outside or the inside, if you take an object and you take it and place it into inside the private domain, into somebody's hand on the inside, or if you reach in and take it out, or vice versa, you are culpable. However, there's a way that it's permitted. So that's the first part, right? The first part deals with you're either culpable or innocent of violating, transferring on Shabbat from domain to domain. Second part of the Mishnah reads like this. פשט בעל הבית את ידו לחוץ ונתן לתוך ידו של עני, או שנטל מתוכה והכניס, בעל הבית חי ועני פטור. The householder reached his hand outside and he put inside the hand of the poor man, or he took from it and brought it inside. He took from the household. The poor man had his hand like this. He took the bread and brought it inside. Then the householder on the inside is culpable, and the poor man on the outside is exempt. However, that's the end of the first part. The second part says the following. This is actually the second part. If the poor man on the outside put his hand on the inside, and the Baal Habayit just happened to be standing on the inside with a piece of bread in his hand, and the poor man, he says here, and whatever, doesn't have to say anything, or does say something, whatever, and the poor man picks it out. He's standing on the outside, and he picks it up and he takes it. Oh, sorry, no. He reaches his hand inside like this, and the householder on the inside puts something in his hand. What has the householder done? he didn't change anything from domain to domain. He's still in the house. He just put something in the person's hand, but he didn't transfer anything. The poor man's on the outside. He didn't take anything or put anything down. So you see how it works. If the poor man stuck his head in the inside and he took something from the householder, if the poor man took a piece of bread and put it in the inside, and the householder took the piece of bread from the poor man's hand, or if the poor man stuck his hand inside and the householder put something in his hand and brought it out, they're both exempt. And vice also on the outside, this is the two that are four, right? On the outside, the balabayit, the householder stuck his hand outside, and the poor man took out from the householder's hand, or if the rich man puts his hand out and the poor man takes something out of it, and while the rich man's hand is on the outside, the rich man didn't do anything. He's on the inside. He didn't pick up or put down. He just put his hand out. So they're both exempt. The poor man didn't do anything and the rich man didn't do anything. Or whoever they are. It doesn't matter. Poor or rich is just because it's for example's sake. It's any Jew, two Jews in two domains. Okay, so what is later on the Gemara in Daf Gimel discusses this. It says the following: Amar le lokasha bishlama bavaderesh. So let's go back to the excellent translation of Rabbi Steinsaltz and his team. To be Bet Amud Bet at the end. Bet Amud Bet at the end, bottom of the page. 2b at the bottom of the page. Rav raised the dilemma before Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, on whom another person loaded with food or drink. No, sorry. Wrong place. 2a, 2b. There's 3a. So we're questioning about how many possibilities are there. There's two that are four. There's actually, you could say there are 8 or 16 different legal distinctions in this case. Abaye said, according to your reasoning, there's 16 actions. Even the first part of the Mishnah, one who receives the object and the one who places the object, each participates in the performance of a prohibited action. Therefore, you could count 16 actions. Amar le ha lakasha. Bishlama bavav deresha pator mutar lo katane. It's not difficult, Rav Matana said to Abaye. Not difficult. The first section of the Mishnah speaks of the case in which one performing the action is exempt from punishment by the Torah law, and even by rabbinic law, he is ab initio permitted to perform the action. Ex post facto, after the fact, you shouldn't have done it, but you don't. But no. If it's ab initio permitted, vadai, and after the fact is permitted. So when the poor person or homeowner neither lifted nor placed the object, that is to say, the object was placed into or removed from the hands by the others, their role is insignificant. Therefore, it was not taught in the Mishnah, and those cases were not factored into the total number of acts carrying from domain to domain. However, with regard to the latter section of the Mishnah, where the person performing those actions is exempt by Torah law, but his actions are prohibited by rabbinic law, it's different. Since the sages prohibited those actions, they should be included in the total in the Mishnah, which should be 12, but not 8. You do the math. Because I still have yet to do the math. Mika bukuli Shabbos pator mutar. So, let's see what Rabbi Eiger says about this. Rabbi Eiger says, look in the first Tosfos on Gimel Amud Aleph. First Tosfos in Gimel Aleph says the following: in the first part of the Mishnah, the law is that one is pator, one is mutar, right? One is exempt, and there's somebody who is pator, meaning pator al asor, meaning he's exempt from bringing a korban chatat. He doesn't have to bring a korban. However, he shouldn't have done it. And then the other of the four, and the first four possibilities in the first half of the Mishnah is just mutar legamre, right? So that's in the first half of the first Mishnah in the Shabbos. So if you ask, but what about that? Wait a second. Okay, so I understand I'm putting my hand outside, and he just puts it in my hand, and I take it in, or the poor guy just puts his hand inside, and I just put it in his hand, and he wasn't really transferring because he's on the outside, and he didn't do anything to bring it in. It just happened to come into his hand. It might be if he said, I don't know, does speech play a role in this? If he said it, or if he please give me a piece of bread, or give me something, or whatever, or if they just happened to be there and just happened to took it out. Who did anything, really? Who transferred anything? It's the definition of the actual transferring is what is interesting here. So the Talmud says, so wait a second, what about lifnei iver? There's a mitzvah in the Torah that says, you shall not place a stumbling before a blind man, which is interpreted by all of the commentaries as everything under the sun, but, well, not everything, but any kind of way to provide an opportunity for a Jew to violate the Torah. To set the stage for a Jew to violate the Torah is called lifnei iver. Do not place a stumbling block before the blind. In nowhere, in one of my chavrusas in the yeshiva once said that in all his study, and at least in the Minchas Chinuch, what he saw, he never saw, and he looked in a bunch of the Mefarshim, he didn't once see that it actually meant if there's a blind person on the street, you don't put a rock in front of him. Why? Because, what are we, stupid? What are we, idiots? Of course you don't. If there's a blind person walking down the street, you don't put a rock in front of him. That's mean, okay? The Torah requires a minimum of intelligence. That's for all of humanity. You don't do a thing like that. Unless in extenuating circumstances, like you don't know who this blind person is. You assume on the scale of merit, somebody you don't know and he's blind. You don't push him. You don't say, hey, let's make a banana peel in front of him. What is this? The first joke in the Garden of Eden, right? Adam and Eve, slipping on the banana peel. No, it's not human. Anyhow, so that's why it's not actually written down, because it's just a human thing. You don't have to, things that are very, very human, it doesn't necessarily need to be spelled out in Torah law or rabbinic law. It's discussed sometimes, but not everything is written. So if you say, this is lifnei iver, but even if you say, I'm touching the Tosfos, even if you say that he could take it, even if it wasn't in his hand, he didn't do lifnei iver. He put the piece of bread, or let's get him more lifnei iver. This guy outside is an alcoholic, or the balabayit is the alcoholic. The balabayit is he's a drunk, right? And he's off the wagon. I guess, does that mean you're on the wagon means you drink? I get mixed up. Let's say you're on the wagon means you're not drinking, right? And so he's on the wagon. He's on the sober wagon. And some guy comes along, and right outside his window, in the public domain, he places, some really good Grey Goose, or something like that. And it's, his favorite drink. He knows it's his favorite drink. He puts it down. He knows that this guy, if he has a drink, he flips, and he's going to have another and another, off the wagon. That's called lifnei iver. So why doesn't this apply here in any case of Sabbath violation from transferring from Reshut to Reshut? So the Tosfos continues. Anyhow, what does he say? So the example given by the Tosfos is offering a glass of wine to a Nazir. Nazirs are not allowed to not only drink wine, but they're not even supposed to eat grapes or grape seed. They're not supposed to go into cemeteries, they're not supposed to become impure from the dead, and they're not allowed to cut their hair. It's a difficult law of somebody who feels an inner spiritual need to hold himself to a higher level of sanctity. You don't give a glass of wine to a Nazir. It's called lifnei iver, placing a stumbling block before the blind. The Nazir it's very hard to be a Nazir, and he might slip up, right? It's like it says in Avodah Zarah, in another tractate. So if you're on one side of the river and the Nazir's on the other side of the river, right? Well, okay, the chances would be slim, but still, you don't make a possibility. That's lifnei iver. The extent of the law is even if the Nazir, maybe he's very thirsty, and maybe he's been walking for days or whatever, and he needs something to drink. Wine was the normal drink in the old days. It's cut with a lot of water, but a lot of people drank more wine in the ancient world. Anyhow, he's a Nazir, he can't drink wine. It's a river. He sees there's a nice bottle of wine or glass of wine or whatever on the other side of the river. You don't do it. That's lifnei iver. But nonetheless, the Tosfos says, it's forbidden by rabbinic law, even if it's all the way across the river. However, we're enjoined to keep people away from. One Jew is enjoined to do what he can to keep another Jew away from sin. But even if you live now, what if it's not a Jew? Is a Jew enjoined to keep a not a Jew away from transgression? The not a Jews have 7 laws. Belief in one God. What are the others? Don't kill, don't steal, don't commit adultery, not blaspheming God, not disrespecting God. Those are the same two. And not eating the flesh of a living animal, and setting up a just court system and abiding by it. And there are a lot of details of these laws which are very, very similar to the Bible, law in the Bible, and many of them are found in the Talmud, and many of them are found in Roman law and Ottoman law and American law and British law, whatever. It's the basis of modern law, really, the 7 laws, if you're a historian of law, which you probably aren't. Anyhow, but you're probably interested if you're watching this. Anyhow, so what about, is a Jew enjoined not to put a situation where a non-Jew would violate? There's no, you could say no. It's what the non-Jew does is his own business. He has his own court system. He has his own laws. He says no. The Tosfos says no. Isur d'Rabbanan mi'ika. There's a rabbinic prohibition of placing a stumbling block before a blind man, even concerning a non-Jew. You're not supposed to set the stage for one of our cousins among the nations to violate the law. Okay, so Rabbi Akiva Eiger, the reason why he pointed us to this Tosfos on Daf Gimel is because it just quotes Daf Gimel, Daf Yud Tet. It quotes our Gemara. It says you can put food before a non-Jew in your courtyard. He takes it and he goes. Why? Because you don't need it. This could be translated in 2 ways. You don't need it, or he doesn't need it. I think it means actually the first. You don't need it. You put food out in your courtyard. It's a sign. It's like, I don't need it. Who puts food outside like that? You keep your food in your kitchen in a clean place, not where the dog's running around or whatever, or flies. So, meaning, Tosfos continues that dafka, actually, when the non-Jew is in the courtyard, that's actually a case when the non-Jew is in the courtyard. But then there's no problem, You're there in the courtyard, you're talking to Kowalski, whatever, there's food there, he takes some food and walks away, right? It's understood that this is not, it's not your food, and it's not a case of stealing, and non-Jews are commanded not to steal, just like everybody in the world is commanded not to steal. So yeah, okay, I put it in the courtyard. It's a sign that I've relinquished ownership, called hefker. So the case, the Tosfos says is dafka in a case where the non-Jew is in the courtyard, but if he's standing outside and he puts his head inside, then there's a problem it's an explicit case of almanat lotzi. What's the specific prohibition there? It's you're causing a case for a non-Jew, a ben Noach, or not whatever, not a ben Noach, to go and either steal, but I think it's transfer. The question is with the Shabbos law. Now, Jews keep Shabbos. Noachites are not commanded to keep Shabbos. However, the Mishnah Berurah specifically states that if a non-Jew, ben Noach, a good Gentile cousin of ours, is or wherever, a ben Noach decides to keep Shabbos, if for a certain period of time he, like say, after 3 times he's been keeping a law of Shabbat, that he is actually required, according to the Mishnah Berurah, the halachic authority for all of the Ashkenazim and many of the Sfaradim too, is if you choose to. But the great Mishnah Berurah says that Ben Noachite is required to continue keeping that law of Shabbos. Or you could say, and the Tosfos continues, that we're talking about a not a Jew, and the object belongs to the not a Jew, and that even bringing in and taking out all day, there's no prohibition because he's not commanded to keep the Shabbos. It's only this rare case where, according to the Mishnah Berurah, where he might happen to have taken upon himself some of the laws of Shabbos. Okay? Or even in a very rare case, all of the laws of Shabbos. He's not Jewish, he didn't convert, but for some reason he's keeping Shabbos. Now, I'm just going to bring in the basic laws. It says in the Talmud, a non-Jew who keeps the Sabbath is culpable of the death penalty. Now, this does not mean that you actually kill a non-Jew for keeping Sabbath. This was in the ancient times. In the ancient times it meant, and if this is taken out of context, you're going to be in big trouble, buddy. Anyhow, but if they'll take that quip out of context, because if a non-Jew, in the ancient times started keeping Shabbat, there was a reason. There was different times back then, and there was a reasonable suspicion of 2 things. One, that he wanted to become close to the Jews, and perhaps he wanted to steal. So it could happen. Or, what's the motivation for the non-Jew to keep the Sabbath? One, he wants to keep the Sabbath because he loves God and he loves the Torah. He loves his Jewish friends. Good. If he doesn't want to be Jewish, fine. Okay, he can do it. But can you know that that's the reason? Perhaps there are other possibilities. So one opinion, it's just one opinion in the Talmud. There's everything in its opposite you can find somewhere as an opinion in the Talmud. The question is, how do we decide the law? The other is maybe he wanted to steal, or the other is maybe he wanted to create his own religion. Because if he doesn't accept Jewish belief, which is the belief of the whole, really has universal applications. The belief, not that everybody has to be Jewish, but it's the basis, you can't deny it's the basis of Christianity and Islam, it's the basis of all monotheism, and it has elements found in Eastern religions as well. So Abraham had sent his descendants to India. It all comes from Abraham, right? So maybe he didn't get the Abrahamic faith, and maybe he was trying to make his own little cult with the red strings and the weird Magen Davids and the chickens. And I don't know. So who knows? It could be. Those are all the possibilities, and the Talmud discusses all the possibilities. So that was an iyun on the Daf Yomi, and now. Without further ado, in the next video, I'm going to try to zip through it in, without making any promises, 40 minutes. This is Betzal Edwards signing off.